My pick for Halloween 2024 is Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark, a 1987 vampire teenage whatever this movie is. Let's take a look at it and say why I think it's underrated coming up next. So to say this is underrated, I look at Letterboxd, 3.5 out of 5. Not a bad rating, but I think that's a little too low given what they tend to give horror movies and other fare like this, which this movie has a lot written about it. It's been studied academically. I think this is a fascinating movie in a lot of ways. One reason I think it's really good is this genre hybridity. It's a very elusive movie, A-L-L, elusive. It's pointing to all kinds of genre traditions. It's bringing together vampire movie, teenage rebel movie, American Western, noir, and a couple others in this sort of package that sort of shifts which kinds of genre it's talking about as it goes through the movie. And by the end, yeah, I must say that, I'm not going to spoil it, but is there going to be a showdown? Yeah, sort of. So you kind of know, and it's kind of delightful, in my opinion, to notice how Catherine Bigelow and her screenwriter partner, Eric Red, brought those together. Now, as this is vampire noir, what's interesting is it's in the context of the AIDS crisis epidemic, in the mid-1980s. This is 1987. Maybe some other sort of diseases. A lot of vampire fare is about diseases and illnesses, viruses being spread around, the fear of that. That's actually originally what Bram Stoker, part of the vision of the original Dracula novel, was. And so you have these sort of rebel vampire figures who are roaming around Oklahoma, Texas sort of area, but they're also vagabonds, sort of drug addict-like, and homeless. I think a number of sort of contemporary 1980s American social issues come up with these very figures. As well, this is a Gen X teenage movie about, and it focuses on, in my opinion, the main character, the protagonist, the male, who gives into his desire, has the hots for a girl, and very, very quickly in the movie gets caught up, literally gets bit by her, and his seduction is complete with his entrance into this vampire gang. That effectively makes him, one, infected, two, a teenage rebel who's run away from home inadvertently, and three, he's an erstwhile criminal, one of those types of movie characters, a classic movie character who's caught up in a lot of bad business and he doesn't intend to be, and throughout the movie the ethical choices whether he's going to drink the blood of a human and become a full-fledged vampire, part of the gang, or whether he will not drink the blood of a human and sort of remain in between, as it were, near dark, between the light and the dark. Of course, these vampires can't go into the sun or they will burn up and explode. They must stay in the dark. That is a main feature in the movie, and the question is, which direction will this character go in? The light and the dark play is a morality play in this way for the protagonist. I think a lot of things make this movie interesting to a great number of people. Bill Paxton, actually we should say Catherine Bigelow, going to get married to James Cameron in a couple years after this movie, but she borrows three of his actors for the movie Aliens. There's even a direct Aliens reference in this, and Bill Paxton plays a kind of wild vampire rebel figure who gets to one up and three times the amount of absurdity and stupidity and great horror comic stuff that he was kind of doing in Aliens, which I really, really like that performance, but there's a tiny dose of it there. In Near Dark, there's a huge dose of Bill Paxton, so if you like that sort of thing in Aliens, you're going to get a lot more of it here. There's at least two ways to watch this, and maybe three or four for sure. There's a very basic, as I said, light-dark morality play, where the main character has to abide by the law or go to the side of the law, which is the side of nuclear family, order in modern Midwest America, and thus not become a vampire. He's too tempted to become a criminal, a serial killer, which is effectively what these vampires are, seduced to the dark side. To play with a Star Wars metaphor. So to get back to the proper moral order, it's a very moralistic tale if you want to look at it that way. It looks kind of like one of those after-school specials of the day. Don't give in to drugs, kids, that sort of thing with the main character. But I think it's a very well-done version of that. As far as cinematography and sound, the score by Tangerine Dream. But as with so much of this fare that goes all the way back to the 50s, the 20s, the Revolutionary War, the bad guy rebels are actually good guys that'll win your heart if you're an American, the type of American who wants to be sort of kind of a rebel figure, and that's what the vampires stand for. They're rebelling against all kinds of things. including consumer culture, which comes up in this movie several times. I can point this out to you, here, and here, where you have the transactions or the credit, and that's the side of the law and order, the light side of things. The vampires against that in their own way, and they tear up a business establishment, for example. Maybe they're sort of anarchists against the capitalist system, if you want to look at them that way. But their rowdiness is attractive, or has its own attractiveness. But frankly, I don't think they're on the side of right here. They're literally drinking people's blood and killing them and throwing them away. They're a roving gang of serial killers. And yet, nevertheless, you can see why a teenager might be attracted to this kind of type of person. So thus, it's a Gen X movie in its own way. Which side will you go to? Which side will be on the struggle for your soul? For the main character, he's got his cowboy hat on at the beginning. There's a great little moment where he has to throw it away as the vampire gang take them into their RV, which has aluminum foil all over it so they won't get the sun to pour into it. That throwing away the hat is nice symbolism. Getting rid of his staple American identity, his machismo, his Westerner, good guy sort of identity. Later in the movie, he'll get his hat back. Oops, spoiler alert, but he will get his hat back, and I think that's a key moment. There's a number of key symbols like that articulate or show you what exactly I said about this. The light versus dark, the Western play of will you be a good guy or a villain, whatever good guy means. So, the protagonist has a key ethical choice. There's a moment in the movie, I love the shot, where there's a light over here and the dark over here. There's a lot of these kinds of shots, frankly, with this main character. Whereas the vampires get a lot of blank slate, dark-only shots. Bigelow loves these very close shots. She's much closer up in her close shots than a lot of directors at this time, which on a big screen makes this movie perhaps more affecting and more interesting to stare at the faces. But the vampires have all blackness behind them, versus the main character is this light and dark play a lot of times when he's got to make his choices. One might argue the ending is actually cheesy. I would guess that's why some people on Letterboxd would say this, because well, here's a spoiler. Sorry to spoil things. The girl is rescued, and these vampires can be cured. Vampirism is not a permanent disease or problem or identity. It can be cured through a blood transfusion by the good side, by the dad, and by people who are normal human beings. So you basically get a princess rescue story in this. I find this kind of affecting. Whether you believe the main romance or not, which is kind of in the most warped way, this is a romantic comedy. There's actually a meet cute at the beginning, and sort of love each other in their own weird way as the gang kind of vies for their affections too. But by the end, there's a princess rescue story. Does that bother you? Does it bother me? I don't know, but I think it's fine. I kind of like the way this movie is playing with, the bad guys are alluring, but there's a light side that wins out. There's no religious significance for me there. It's just that sort of more uplifting tale. We're in a time where there's a lot of dark, gross out stuff. Horror movies that are just they're not going to be uplifting in any way, and this one has it. I think Bigelow likes that sort of slight uplift to her stories, if I remember correctly, or some kind of at least heroism on the part of somebody. And anyway, she's a good shot maker. I think she studied as a painter, and you get all these chiaroscuro compositions and a lot of great landscape shots. In a weird way, this is a movie that is one close up in the actors' faces a lot, but also them in relief against a background that is, one sense, giving the psychological dimension to their and sociological dimension to their struggles, but also the landscape that shapes and transforms them. And that's the West, or really it's the Middle West, Oklahoma. Whether it's West or Midwest is up for you to decide. We think this is the middle of America, the literal center, sort of, and that's the central battle over the main character's ethical identity. Will they go with the rebels or with the more traditional American kinds of things? That is, and will a vampire female do this as well? And I'm a Bigelow fan. I like almost all of her movies as far as I can remember. I actually think they're almost all underrated, frankly, including some of the ones she won an Academy Award for. So I appreciate her filmmaking. I think she learned from James Cameron. There are hints of the Terminator in this movie, absolutely, by the ending, but I think she becomes her own filmmaker. I think even here, in what is considered her first or second feature, depending on how you define feature, this is one of her first movies, and she's already showing great promise here, as then she delivered on later in her career. What do you think of Near Dark? Let us know in the comments, and please subscribe to this channel for more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.